Hi, everyone. Today, we'll talk about the so-called functional swing plane. And in next several videos, I will continue talking about the functional swing plane. Before we start the details, let me first direct your attention to the Golf Biomechanics playlist. So currently, I have 5 videos classified in this category. The 4 of them are related to force and torque. So torque part 1, 2, 3, and the ground reaction force. And then not long ago, I posted a video on golf swing events and phases. And it is particularly important to watch this video before you continue. Because from now on, I will use the swing event and phase abbreviations quite a bit here and there. So if you have not done it yet, then please go over watch this video first, and then come back to the swing plane video. Okay, when we hear the term swing plane, then we tend to connect it to the motion plane of the club. So the plane along which the club is moving. So again, swing plane generally means the plane of motion of the club. However, some of the popular plane definitions that we're currently using are not really related to the motion plane of the golf club. So for example, here's the Ben Hogan's shoulder plane. In this one, basically the swing plane is depicted as a glass pane connecting the ball and the shoulders with a hole here. So the head is sticking out through the hole. And as you can see here, the club is actually located way below the shoulder plane. So this plane is not really the motion plane of the club, but rather it is just a reference plane. And it will generally show the body posture, and the slope and the direction of the plane will show the body posture, but this plane is not directly related to the motion plane of the club. One thing interesting in this is that Ben Hogan recognized that the backswing plane and the downswing plane are not the same. So here in this diagram here, the plane in color is the backswing plane. The one in black is the downswing plane. So as you can see, the downswing plane is a bit flatter than the backswing plane, and also it is aligned more rightward or outward when compared to the backswing plane here. So in other words, during the swing plane can change. But still in this one, he's using the plane connecting the ball and the shoulders as the swing plane. So this is just no more than a reference plane. So it has nothing to do with the actual motion of the club. And because of that, some instructors like Hank Haney criticized the shortcoming of this definition. Then let's take a look at the view of Hank Haney. In describing his swing model, the so-called Onplane swing, basically, he's showing that the club always stays parallel to the initial alignment. So this is the initial shaft alignment, club alignment. So let's call this shaft plane. Then throughout the swing, the club maintains this parallel alignment to the initial plane, which is not true, and which is really difficult to do in a mechanical perspective. And also, more importantly, one major issue in this swing model is that the fact that the club returns to an initial alignment and then make the impact, as you can see. But this is simply not true. At impact, the club shows a lot stiffer alignment than the initial shaft alignment. So, but anyways, again, the shaft plane is not really plane of motion. It's just a reference plane. And the club does not really move parallel to this plane throughout the swing. and it does not return to the initial alignment. So this shafter plane, in spite of his criticism on Ben Hogan's definition of swing plane, but still the shafter plane is just a plane of a reference plane. It is not associated with the actual motion of the club. The next is Jim Hardy's shoulder line and the arm line. So the reason why I use the lines here because these are not real planes. But anyway, the Jim Hardy classified the swing into one plane swing and the two plane swing based on the arm alignment at the top of action. So in the one plane swing, the lead arm and the shoulder line are matched here. So then this is called the one plane swing. And then in this one here, the lead arm shows a lot steeper alignment than the shoulder line here. So there's an angle between the shoulder line and lead arm line here. But in this case, this swing is classified as a two-plane swing. So his classification is based on the lead arm and shoulder lines. But however, these are not really, again, associated with the motion of the club or motion of the arms and the shoulders. On the way down, the arms and the shoulders are moving very differently from these alignments. So I just call them shoulder line and arm line. And although he's classifying the swing into a one-plane swing and two-plane swing, but I don't really, I didn't see the plane explained in the book, in this book here. So it's just a way to classify the swings, but this term plane does not really mean anything specifically. But here, one thing I want to emphasize is that it is generally dangerous to try to characterize someone's swing based on the static posture at the top. So for example, here, in this two-plane swing here, because the arm is aligned a lot steeper, so we also expect a steeper swing plane during the downswing. But if you look at this golfer, this is a former PGA Tour player. So he's showing this two-plane swing pattern at the top here. But in spite of this steep alignment of the arm, the lead arm, and the club here, his swing plane is actually the flattest, 43 degrees. This is his driver swing, but 43 degrees is the flattest that I've ever seen. Yeah, so in spite of this, again, a steep alignment of the lead arm and the club, he's actually showing really flat swing plane. Because he's moving the club head high up in the backswing, and then so through the top of backswing position here, the club head is moving rapidly down toward the swing plane. So unless you really pay attention to, unless you have information about the history of motion of the club near the top of backswing, just the posture at the top of backswing may not mean that much. So it is important to understand that what actually happens in terms of the motion of the club in the downswing is related to the entire motion history of the club during the backswing, and particularly right before the top of backswing here. Okay, then let's talk about the so-called functional swing plane. This is the definition I developed. This was initially reported in our paper published in 2012, the assessment of planarity of the golf swing based on the functional swing plane of the club head and motion planes of the body points. And then in this, basically, the functional swing plane is defined based on the club head trajectory. The most important motion in the golf swing is obviously the club head motion. And particularly what I'm using here is the trajectory from mid downswing to mid follow through. When the club is parallel to the ground during the downswing and during the follow through in the frontal view. So if we look at this club head trajectory here, this phase obviously includes the most important instant, the ball impact. So from here to here, if you look at the cleavage motion, the cleavage trajectory actually shows almost the perfect planar motion. So mathematically, you can calculate the plane, the best fit plane to this trajectory here. So that is called the functional swing plane. In other words, functional swing plane is the best fit plane calculated from the cleavage trajectory between mid downswing and mid follow through. So this plane is was actually calculated, and it reflects the motion of the cleavage, so it's meaningful. And so the functional swing plane really reflect the swing characteristic of the golfer. Now, so let's change the perspective slightly. So if we look down the swing plane, then it will probably look like this. Okay. Actually, the swing plane is passing through the middle section of the body, and then the eyes are way above the swing plane. So we are essentially looking down the swing plane. And assuming that the cleavage path is close to a circular path, and then because it's inclined and we're looking down, so it will look like an ellipse here. The long axis is basically aligned this way. Okay, so here's the mid downswing and the mid follow through, and we have this elliptical path. And then because the eyes are here at the impact, and so we are actually, your eyes are here, and then this is the actual impact position. So it appears that the cleavage is moving more outward. So we always feel that the cleavage is moving outward. But the low point is somewhere here. At low point, in this case, basically the swing plane is aligned toward the target here. So overall, the overall plane is aligned toward the target, but because we are looking down the elliptical path with the eyes not at the center of the ellipse, but that's why it looks like the cleavage is moving outward. But if you do this too much, then you create quite a bit of outward swing path, then the whole plane will be aligned outward. Then it causes some trouble. But anyways, so this is what it looks like to us, to the golfer. And this is the down the line view here. And this line shows the cleavage trajectory. So, and then at the top of action, you will see that the cleavage is located way above the function swing plane here. And then, but it quickly comes down. It approaches toward the swing plane. Here, from mid downswing to a mid follow through. So it shows a good planar motion here, and it starts going up above the swing plane. And then this is the late follow through here. And then the cleavage is located fairly high above the swing plane at top of action because of the flexion path. So this golfer moves the cleavage above the swing plane in the backswing, and then using this and the continuous motion toward the swing plane. So the golfer has a natural shallowing motion. But generally, when the cleavage goes slightly above the swing plane and then bring it slightly down or shallowing the club, is good. So it's an easy way to create club shadowing. And then eventually you will have a well-defined swing plane here. And then when you swing back and forth continuously, as I usually do in the reprogramming sessions, when you move the club back and forth continuously, then generally you're moving the club along the swing plane here. And then toward the end of the backswing, and the end of the downswing, the club head may go slightly away from the swing plane, but not this much. In this one, because you're starting from the static setup position, and then try to bring the club head intentionally up here, and then create this shallowing, so it goes a bit higher. But when you usually swing the club or the orange whip or rope along the swing plane back and forth, then they will generally stay close to the swing plane here. So you should be able to establish good swing plane here. And at the end, it may deviate from the swing plane a little bit. Okay, then let's take a look at this slightly different angle here. So this time I'm basically bringing up this concept of the hand motion plane. So this is the plane formed by the hand motion. So again, in this one here, this is the mid downswing and this mid follow. So these dots basically show the club trajectory used in the calculation of the swing plane, function swing plane. And then once we compute this function swing plane, they extend it and they project the actual club head position to the swing plane. So this is the projected position. This is the actual club head path trajectory, but this is the this is projected trajectory of the club head. And we can do the same thing to the hand motion. At the top of version, the hands are here. So this is the hand center. The hand center comes down toward the swing plane and then touches the swing plane here. And then starts moving up again. And then from mid downswing to this position is zero cocking, when the wrist loses cocking completely. So from mid downswing to zero cocking, as you can see here, the hand center pretty much stays on the swing plane, right on the swing plane. So from mid downswing to zero cocking, again, this phase includes the impact. So this phase may be called the delivery phase. But during this phase, the club head definitely stays on the swing plane, and then the hand center also stays on the plane. In other words, from mid downswing to zero cocking here in this phase, the functional swing plane actually is the plane of motion of the club. So one thing important here is that the functional swing plane can be considered as the motion plane of the club between the mid downswing and the zero cocking, including the impact here. So the functional swing plane can be used in characterizing the swing pattern of the golfer. And also one thing I want to attract your attention to is the hand position. So this is the early downswing, and the club head is not far from the swing plane. But as you can see here, the hands are deviated from the swing plane a bit more. And here, this is mid follow through. The club head should be on the function swing plane, but the hand center is deviated from the function swing plane quite a bit here. So in other words, the hand motion plane is steeper than the function swing plane. So while the club head is moving along the function swing plane, your hand, the hand center, will move a bit more above, up and down. So it has this large deviation here and here. So in other words, you will need a little bit of wrist flipping in order to maintain this motion here. So the hand motion plane is steeper than the function swing plane. For example, in the driver swing, it's about 10 degrees steeper than the function swing plane. And I will revisit this issue later when I do additional episodes on the function swing plane. And then I will relate it to my reprogramming strategy. So for the moment, we'll just say that the function swing plane is quite meaningful because it shows the motion plane of the club in this important phase here. And also the hand motion plane is steeper than the function swing plane. And then, so here are some facts about the function swing plane. First, on the average, the function swing plane passes through the mid-trunk section. And actually, it's way below the shoulders. So as you can see here, this is quite typical here. This pattern is quite typical, but the swing plane is passing through the midsection of the trunk here, and then way below the shoulders. And of course, this is the average slope. So the golfers can show a steeper swing plane or flatter swing plane than is expected, depending on the swing style. If the golfer has an arm-driven swing, then particularly at the beginning, the golfer has a casting-like action, then you will see steeper swing plane. So the swing plane passes between the midsection and the shoulders, somewhere here. And then when the low body does not act that much, so you have a really passive low body, and particularly when you keep the knees flexed quite a bit, then you will see a flatter swing plane. So the swing plane goes down somewhere here between the midsection of the trunk and the mid pelvis point here. So the actual slope really reflects the swing style of the golfer. But the bottom line is, on the average, is passing through the midsection of the trunk, not near the shoulders, but not near where the initial alignment is. And then an easy way to approximate the swing plane is using the elbow position here. So the swing plane generally passes through the elbows at the setup position here. So some people call this elbow plane, but elbow plane is a good approximation of the swing plane, the functional swing plane. And then one thing really important here to understand is the fact that the swing plane is actually substantially steeper than the initial shaft alignment. So here's the shaft plane here. But this is the actual function swing plane. And then if you look at the hand position here, you have this much deviation. On the average, it's 13 centimeters, or slightly over 5 inches. So you will see that the swing plane is actually a lot steeper than the initial shaft plane. And this is something you have to clearly understand. A lot of golfers have a misunderstanding here, and they try to bring the club back to an initial alignment. That is not a natural movement. Interestingly, both Hank Haney's on-plane swing and then also Jim Hardy's one-plane swing promote this concept, bringing the club back to the initial alignment. But simply, this is not true. It's not a fact. So when you look at the 3D data enough, then you will easily see that it is not true to bring the club back to the initial shaft alignment. And then also the swing plane on the average is substantially flatter than the shoulder plane, than Hogan's shoulder plane. So this is the shoulder plane connecting the ball and the shoulders here. So between these two, you will see the actual swing plane, the slope varies depending on the swing style of the golfer. So let's go back to, let's work on this aspect a bit more. So this is a quasi on-plane swing. So you will see that a lot closer match between the initial alignment and the swing plane here. And this is the flattest, this is the case of flattest swing plane, 43 degrees in the driver condition. And then this is what we typically see. So you see, again, on the average, about 13 centimeter deviation of the hand center from the swing plane. And then in this case, this golfer shows about 47-degree slope here. So this is a typical situation. This is quite unusual. Even this golfer shows about 5 centimeter difference between the hand positions here at 2 different time points. So it's about 2 inches. And then the reason why this golfer has just a flat swing plane is because he keeps the knees bent quite a bit. And as you can see, his pelvis motion is quite simple. In this one, the golfer uses a lower body driven swing here. So the pelvis motion is quite complex here. And then the left knee sticks out at the top of the chin and so on. And then the right leg shows more extension here. But that's why the pelvis motion looks a lot more complex. So when the golfer uses the ground reasonably well, then you will see that this always happens. only when the golfer tends to sit down or the pelvis collapses down, then you will see these two showing a close match. But still, it is impossible to return to the initial alignment. There should be some deviation here. And then the reason why it is not a good idea to, or not a feasible idea to bring the club back to the initial alignment is that in the backswing, the motion is slow. So you have a lot more time. Initially, the club was aligned this way, but you can bring the club up quite a bit here. On the way down, you have a lot shorter time, and also the motion of the club is a lot faster than that in the backswing. So initially, if you introduce the motion in wrong direction, then it will affect the motion of the club the rest of the phase, downswing phase. So you have to be really careful. Because you don't have enough time, you will just shallow the club a little bit and then execute the swing. And so you don't have time to come down here. So the time is one thing. And also, this is something related to the concept of torque. So I'm not going to explain here, but when the club goes below the center of mass, then it causes in terms of generating torque. So there are many reasons not why bringing the club down all the way here to the initial alignment is not a good idea, or mechanically not feasible. Yeah. But anyway, so what's actually happening is during the downswing, you will have a bit shallowing of the club and then have a fast motion of the club along a lot steeper plane here than the initial alignment. So do not expect the club coming back to the initial alignment. Now, oftentimes people try to show that the famous players like Ben Hogan actually brought the club back down to an initial alignment using a down the line view. But it's quite confusing and misleading, depending on where exactly the camera is located and so on. Of course, if you have a three-dimensional analysis data like this, then the easiest way is to just align the stickman along the swing plane and then see how far the initial hand position is deviated away from the swing plane. This is the best way to show that these are not on the same plane. But if you are using video and then try to figure out whether a golfer is returning to the initial alignment, then check this website here. It's actually my website, DrKwonGolf.info. If you go to this site, so this is the DrKwonGolf Biomechanics website here. And then you will find this Biomechanical Foundation tab here. Click this one. This is still under construction. So some pages are done, but some are not. So, pay a visit to this page and then look at some of these things. When you scroll down this, all the way down here, you will see a section called technical notes. And so this has some technical notes here. Now, one of them is this one, the second last one. Does the club return to the initial shutter plane? How to prove or disprove it? If you click this one, so it will show a short article. And then here, the procedure is explained. So instead of using the down the line view, because in down the line view, depending on where you put the club, and then whether you have the exact instance, of the club alignment at impact, but it looks very different. So a better way to figure out whether the club is returning to initial alignment is using the frontal view. And because the plane is inclined, so the club length depends on the slope of the plane on which the club is moving. And for example, here, this is the one using leg dominant swing here. And then this is the initial setup. And here's the club. And this is at impact. So near the vertical line, near the impact. When these lines are fairly aligned with the vertical in vertical direction, if you measure the length of this, even if the image is a little bit fuzzy, but still you will be able to find the club. And if you compare the length of the club between the setup position and the impact, if the line appears longer at impact, that means at impact that the club is aligned along a steeper plane. But this is an example of upper body driven swing, and then the pelvis tends to collapse. And in this one, these two lines are fairly similar in length, but still at impact, the leg line will be a bit longer. I mean, the blue line will be a bit longer. So still there is a slight deviation there. Then when you apply this to the real swing here, I got these from YouTube. So these are YouTube images, but this is Justin Thomas. So here's the setup position, and this is the impact. And then, close to the vertical position here. So I got these lines and then compared the length. This is setup and this impact. The impact shows a lot longer line. That means at impact, the club is moving along a lot steeper plane. This is Jason Day, again, setup and the impact here. Setup versus impact. Again, the line at impact is a lot longer. That means that the club is moving along a steeper swing plane. So you can easily see whether your club is coming back to the initial alignment or taking a lot steeper swing plane. You can use the front view. So you can apply this method to any golfer you like, and then test it. Then you will be able to see that the actual swing plane is formed a lot steeper than the initial shaft alignment. Okay, so this is it for this episode. And in the next several videos, I will continue with the discussion on the functional swing plane. Thank you very much.